everybody. Welcome to AFP. David Goss here, joined by Sean K. Of course, Devang out for another show. He defeated the beautiful Major Leeds Soccer, and therefore we banned him from the show for another week for his Arsenal discretions. Discretions? Is that the word? Egressions?
I don't think so, but I don't know what the right word is.
From me. Yeah. Either way, we've got a big show coming up for you. We're going to talk MLS playoffs. Of course, Montreal's big win, RSL's ridiculous performance, I would put it, in Austin, Gonzalo Higuain's final game. And then we're going to talk Canadian Premier League playoffs. We got Forge assistant David Edgar and, of course, Canadian men's national team legend as well. So we'll talk about the first leg between Cavalry and Forge. The second leg, we'll preview everything that's gone into that rivalry over the years, as well as some Canadian men's national team chat, because we are inside the zone for World Cup. And if you have someone like that on, you have to talk about them. Also, the MLS salaries have dropped, Sean, and you find out that if you had stuck with soccer just 25 years longer, you could make a lot of money to be not very good in Major League Soccer.
Unbelievable. Some of the numbers. Unbelievable. That's all.
Okay. I'll let you leave it at that.
I'll leave it there for another segment, but I just think a lot of these numbers are unbelievable compared to where we are. And I'm not saying it's bad, but it's unbelievable.
Either way, we think that MLS players should take some of that money and they should subscribe to our Patreon. Why is that, Sean?
Patreon is the place to support your favorite podcast, us. You get ad-free episodes, you get it a day early, and you get to jump on our Discord where we get to chat MLS all the time, as well as Canadian Premier League, U.S. men's national team, Canadian men's national team. And honestly, you want to talk F1? We got it. You want to talk Sunday morning cartoons? We got it. Anything you want to chat about on our Discord.
Including, I'm trying to get some swag. I'm trying to get some non-Nike Canada gear so I can support during the World Cup. Ollie Platt put out a tweet that may be promising for me in the Adidas department, but either way, that's been a good convo, and I was one day late on this epic jersey that someone put out, that someone put into the Discord, so now I'm back onto the search, and if you want to be a part of that, you can join patreon.com/afootballpodcast to get into that convo and, of course, support us as well. Coming up after the break, we discuss Major League Soccer playoffs and much more. Playoffs. We're talking about playoffs. That, by the way, I'm pretty sure was just a combination of Allen Iverson and Jim Mora. I don't think I actually stuck to one because I kind of forgot about it until I got into it. But we are into the Major League Soccer playoffs. It is the best time of the year. I talked to Paxton Aronson, by the way, today, as well as who else was I talking to? Yeah, name drop, right? And I talked to someone else, and it was funny because it was people from different realms of the world where everyone was like, MLS playoffs, it's crazy. Like, that's just the only thing you can accurately say about the MLS playoffs is that you have no idea what's going to happen, which, as someone who tries to analyze, predict, and preview things, can be very frustrating. But as someone who enjoys soccer, it's really fun to watch. Absolutely.
It was like, I was here last week waxing poetically about Nashville and saying that they could score, and then Mukhtar couldn't really create a chance. They couldn't really get anything. Their hopes were on the shoulders of the Maritime Messi to try to score in the last minute. He had a couple good chances, but yeah, it's unpredictable. You just never know what you're going to get, but it's fun. I love it.
Reeling. I have never heard that nickname for Jacob Schaffelberg before.
The Maritime Messi?
The Maritime Messi. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oof, that's a rough one. That is a rough whole situation going on. Okay. Well, on that note, let's dig in. Let's start with Montreal, Orlando. I was at the game, Sean. I haven't been to a Montreal game. I think that I went to a rivalry week game against TFC. I think it was 2017. So it's been a really long time for me, and everything about this delivered. The city was awesome. The market was great. The energy around it was awesome. And the game was amazing. Like, the atmosphere, the stadium was shaking. Fans, shirts off over their head. it was awesome. And for someone who had to go to Red Bull Arena on Saturday for that game and then go to a baseball stadium on Monday for that game, it was really refreshing in the middle to have that experience.
It's great to hear, because it's funny. Like at the start of the season, we're talking about how Montreal is a bit of a fallen market and it's like struggling to get 13,000, 14,000. And we've always said if they win, the fans will come, because that's sort of Montreal in a nutshell. When that place is full, it is a great place to go watch the game. And just sort of how Stade Saputo is built, sort of like that erector set style, that when it starts going, you can feel it just shake and move. And it's just, yeah, it's something that gets lost in sort of the new era of Major League Soccer. The fear of it all collapsing, but you just get that sort of, like ruckus mentality. It's, I'm glad you had a good time. It's a great city to go to, especially like for a couple days. So, but let's get into the game.
Great city to go to. I just want to make sure that that's driven home. So they won 2-0 against Orlando. I thought this was the biggest, mismatch coming into the postseason. I think it played out that way. I think most of the issues in the game had to do with Orlando. Like, they didn't come to play. They came for the BS, as we talked about last week. They came to get in your heads. They came to just hang around. They had their chances, though. They had 2 big looks in the first half that could have put them up 1-0. They don't. And then Montreal's able to find the differences, and credit to Wilfried Nancy. I think Sean, for the way he slid Sam Piette out wide to change the shape a little. But in the end, it really fell to star players to have star performances, I think, in Georgie, Kai, and then especially Kone.
Absolutely. I think Montreal's going to have to sort of, once again, hold tight for their back line for the 45 minutes, and then just once again, slowly chip away at teams and let their stars shine. And Ismail Kone, I wasn't shocked when I saw him on the 11, but it was just like, okay, it's like, this is go time. This is Montreal's, like they're playing 3 in the middle. They're putting Piette, Kone, and Wanyama in the middle. It's like they're really going to get like playoff gritty and let Kone sort of have a bit of a freer role. And he looks so good. And I know that everyone's sort of high on Kone right now, but it's just, I think the excitement has just gotten everyone. And it's like, this guy with the size, with his speed, with his vision and touch could be an elite player at most leagues in the world. And I think it's just so exciting to see it happen and to see it sort of come from nowhere. Like, I know we've talked that it was like sort of watch out for this kid, et cetera, et cetera. But like a year ago, nobody was talking about Ismail Kone, and now he's being linked to huge moves across Europe. It's great to see.
And this is more your world than mine, so I'm probably going to talk about someone and miss whatever. But I did see some data, Toronto-based guys talking about having watched tape on him for years and how all these lower division, or youth games in Canada are available, and how everyone else missed out, but Kone's been there the whole time and they've been talking about him. I don't know if that's true or not. But as you said, for a lot of us, this has come out of nowhere. And so what blew me away, and we should talk about the soccer side, but what blew me away on Sunday was like to watch him do interviews in 2 languages on national TV and inside in front of 18,000 people after the way he played, to handle himself the way he does, to explain the game the way he does in 2 languages, the charisma that he has at his age, and without that, like, yeah, at 13, you were brought in to sit along Drogba because that was your future and we knew it would be, and you've been media trained and all this stuff. It's all on his own. It's all with his family. And he was like, I was jaw dropped by watching him sort of operate outside of the field. And I was like, this kid's a superstar. This guy's a superstar, whatever you want to call him, because it's all there. And you talked about the physical tools, the soccer IQ, but all the off-field stuff seems to be there. Consistency is the one thing that has to come.
Yeah.
Even in watching this game, he turned the ball over in dangerous areas, trying to make things happen a couple times that maybe a team that had more quality than Orlando would have hurt you. And I still don't think, if I'm John Herdman, I'd start him in a World Cup game right now, because the elements he can bring to change the game, to throw things off, that's something I want on the bench if I need to, but I don't, you can't guarantee his performance, I think, from the start. But for Montreal, who obviously the level's not as high in the playoffs, you can really see, especially with Piet in there, it's like, okay, well, that's your give and take. If Piet's going to play and be a bit more defensive, then you need Kone in there to be a bit more of the attack. And as you said, that's sort of what it looked like in the end against Orlando.
And then I think the thing that we haven't talked about, which we talked about last week, is that they did it without Romel Kyoto. He sat on the bench the entire time. They played Kai Kamara up top, and then they got the result. And so he should, in theory, be ready to go for next game against New York City FC.
So my understanding is the Kyoto thing is like a fatigue injury. He's having muscle issues because he's played so many games. I think he got overplayed with Honduras, especially in that international break when he started both games instead of just one. So to get through, my point in saying that, to get through this round without having to play him, to get him 7 more days of, low intensity, saving his legs, that is a low-key massive win for Montreal, because probably if they don't score for 10 more minutes, right? They scored around the 65th, 66th. They probably play him, and then he's got to rev himself up and then come back down, and that's a strain on his legs. So I think that ended up being a really big moment for Montreal. And I think when we look back, if they make a cup run and he gives them something, we'll look back and say how huge that was. I do have to say, I thought Montreal was poor for 60 or so minutes and not bad, but the 3 things that frustrated me about their game. One was every time they pulled Orlando out of space, whether it was skipping a pass, breaking a line, big switch, they waited and allowed Orlando to recover rather than attacking quickly. And they've done that against the low block all year when they faced it. And that was really frustrating to me because it wasn't patience. It was, I think, a lack of risk taking. And I want this team to take risks because I want them to go for wins and not hold back.
No, I think you're completely right. I noticed something very similar in there. It just didn't feel like it's playoffs soccer. Sometimes you play more afraid than brave. And sometimes that it hurts you and sometimes it doesn't. But I don't know how to break that. And maybe it's just experience. That experience of trusting yourself in these moments that need to come with this team. And they do have some experience up there with like Kamara. Wanyama's been in big games. Obviously, Alistair Johnson and Kamal Miller have been in big games, but in knockout situations, maybe not so as much. But no, it's definitely noted, and maybe it's something that they need to once again just go through and learn from example. I got a question for you though, and it's something that didn't really hit me until a couple days ago with this Kone fest and everything's going on. How much pressure do you think's internal from like the Montreal camp? They sort of got to be looking around, seeing Jordy leaving, Kone leaving, Johnson moving, Kamal Miller potentially moving after a World Cup. Like this roster is going to be Wanyama leaving at the end of this year. Like this roster is going to be completely different. Do you think there's internal pressure being like, we got to do this now, or it's a waste of a generation?
I do. I don't know that that's like life changing in that I think it's similar pressure that a great team has when they want to win. Like anytime you're in a spot like this, although the one time in 2016 when Josie told me, well, this isn't about this year, we're going to be here for 5 years and build a winner, which, okay, I think we can look back on that and sort of wonder whether it was right or wrong. I think that that's sort of always the pressure you're bringing yourself. But I do think that there is a conversation and understanding that this is the one shot for this group. And if they're going to make something special happen, it has to happen now. I will also say, I talked to some people. Wanyama leaving, I had no context to it. So if everyone else already knows this, sorry for repeating. I don't think they've offered him a contract. So I don't think he's saying, I don't want to be in MLS anymore. I don't want to be in Montreal anymore. I think he's playing a little bit of public hardball. But it's not even that. My understanding is they haven't even given him a contract he doesn't like. I don't think they've offered him anything, and he's a free agent after the year. So that was interesting context to me, in which makes me think he may be back, because it felt like he said it with finality when he said it, and now it's like, well, that might be part of the negotiation process for him. So, no, I think that's definitely a part of this. And I think it's definitely something to consider. Now, I will say, they won in that atmosphere, in that crowd, in the last game. They're going to host again against NYC.
Yeah.
I think 100% if they win that game, they've accomplished enough to like reset their image in the market. And I think potentially even if they lose, it could be the case because they won a home playoff game. It's 2 weeks of buildup to go along with the end of the season, which was great. So I don't know that it's cup or bust to me.
That's completely fair. I don't think it is cup or bust either. It's just knowing that this elite franchise is about to be sort of turned upside down because obviously you're going to move 3 to 4 players at the end of this year, but it's just sort of like, oh, we got to do this now or it's never going to, not never going to happen, but it's not going to happen for a while again. But Wolf Nancy's still there. It's still the same organization. They might be able to re-up and go again.
I think Nansei will be around. I think he will have a lot of control over how this team gets built, and I think that'll be a good thing to bring pieces in that sort of fit under his style. I go back to it and watching the game in person and watching his movement. Like, Kai is playing Wilfred Nansei soccer, not Kai Kamara necessarily soccer. And, like, that shows you, I think, how strong he is in his ideas, that players come in and know they have to adjust to him. I think now your hope would be if he starts bringing in players who don't need to adjust because their game fits his style, that there's a potential that even losing some really big pieces, you could continue some level of success. Let's talk NYCFC. What's this matchup, do you think? Sort of what's your thought process looking at this one?
Yeah, I went back and I remember watching both of these games as it was happening. And it was funny because I'm like, holy crap, that team that NYFC like just destroyed Montreal at the beginning of this year. It just doesn't feel like either team at all. But the draw, when I look back at it, that's the one where I feel like I think if Montreal comes in confident and plays the way that they should be playing, I think that they'll sort of like swallow up what New York City FC brings and will need a Sean Johnson to sort of stand at his head and steal the game there, which he can do. There's no doubt in my mind that he can come in and steal a game. But I think if Montreal play that the way that they should and dominate possession and create chances at the top of the box, I think that they'll be okay in that game. But what do you think about New York City? Like, they had an impressive win this past week, but I just don't know about this Inter Miami squad.
So I was really high on Inter Miami. I picked them to win that game because I thought they play really good soccer the last 2 months, like legitimately good, not just Higuain was good.
Yeah.
I thought they were good defensively. I think the midfield pieces fit. I don't think Pozuelo was near healthy in this game, so I think his performance dropped and it affected the team. But all of that is in saying, I thought NYCFC was fantastic. They were better than they've been since the run right after CCL when they won 5 in a row or whatever it was. And they were better than they've been under Nick Cushing at all, including Campeones Cup and those other games they've won, the Red Bull game, whatever. That was the best game they have played. So that felt like NYC. It felt like a lot of guys who played well in the playoffs last year sort of wake up and be like, yep, this is our time, and be very comfortable. Right. Which is worrying, I think, for in Montreal and other teams in the East to see. And so to me, the big X factor of this game is just the decision by NYCFC. Do they go and open up the game and play the best soccer they can play? Or do they shut things down a little bit? Do they try and sit in behind the ball and counter through Rodriguez and Pereira and Eber or Thiago Andrade, whoever it is? So that's the big decision to me. And I think that will have the biggest effect on how it plays out, and which then will then affect the result.
Yeah, fair enough. I think so here's the wonder in my end is I thought Maxi Morales had a bit of not a down year, but I wonder if he's sort of, once again, he's 34, 35 years old. Do you think he's just sort of saving, like just being that old grizzly vet being like, I can't play 34 matches at top gear and just sort of saving himself for these big moments?
Yes. Also, a lot has been asked of him this year. He's played D-mid. He's played as an 8. He's played as a 10. He's played on the wing. So I think that's also been tough for him in sort of finding his space. And I don't think it's a coincidence that Nicolas Acevedo played well and he played well, because I think that sort of gave him the platform to do whatever he wanted.
Fair enough. Who do you feel like at the end of this all? Do you feel like Montreal is going to come out victorious this game, or do you feel like New York City might steal it?
I think it's a toss-up.
Yeah.
I think Montreal being at home is big. I think there's a lot of pieces that I like about Montreal. I actually was more worried about the Orlando matchup because all of the responsibility fell on Montreal to bring the game, to create all of that, which I know they can do, but can be tough than this game. So I have Montreal going into the Eastern Conference Finals. I had it when the playoffs started, and I still feel pretty good about that, because I think some of the issues I was frustrated with, which, by the way, the other two, which I didn't bring, was I don't think they counter press hard enough. So I think the first guy goes to the ball, maybe the second guy goes, the third guy isn't around. And so teams are able to play out of it. And I think more guys have to just turn and be aggressive going upfield. Like Wanyama, credit to him, plays the way he faces all the time. But at some point, you got to turn and go. Kone was the only one doing it. I think those are less of an issue against NYCFC in the end. So this is going to be probably the best soccer game of this round. Like, these are two teams who know who they are with talent, and not just one or two guys, but 13, 14 guys who can play. So it's going to be awesome to see. Let's go to the other side of the Eastern Conference. We saw Cincinnati knock off the Red Bulls in New York. Now they had to play Philadelphia. FC Cincinnati, their first playoff win in their franchise's history. What do you make of this historic year for them?
It's nice to see. I think it's one of those, I don't know if it's just because as a Toronto FC supporter at a time and working for the club, you always don't want to see other teams go through what you went through, and seeing this team sort of turn the corner and figure out its identity and really prove that they can win. It was great to see. I've got a soft spot for Nick Hagelin, obviously spending some time working with him, and just seeing him being a Cincinnati boy and being sort of not the leader in the locker room, but just sort of the local guy that just sort of to stick a pin in and be like, this is our North Star. It's good to see. And I don't know, maybe I've just found Red Bulls to be a little boring this year. And it just doesn't have a fun story
this
to
year,
them.
Like it's new?
Well, maybe of the last few years. I'll at least give them like the Marsh era where they were fun and exciting and had youth, and like, whereas now it's just like, I don't know. They just don't feel, I'm not inspired when Red Bull, you're like, oh, Red Bull's coming up on a TV. I'm like, oh, I'll put them on.
You're not inspired. Like 6,000 people showed up to a freaking home playoff game. Their own fans aren't inspired. A lot of it's tough. A lot of it is tough. It was tough being there. The first half was bad. I think Pat Noonan said to me after the game, off the record, like, I think we set soccer back with that first half in this country. Like, it was one of those. But in the end, Cincinnati had, in year one of this build, they had Sergio Santos to bring off the bench, who I will not tell you is consistent, or maybe he's not even a starter, but he brought more quality to the field than whoever the Red Bulls had to bring on. And I think that's an indictment of a franchise that's been around for a while, roster building, and has built out their academy and has depth, but they haven't, brought any other pieces in to sort of help those guys. So it felt like Struber outsmarted himself as well a little bit. And unfortunate that Lewis Morgan gets hurt, because I think that changes the game if he's in, but he gave them the one goal to play off of, and they weren't able to keep it up. And so FC Cincinnati moves on to the next round. They'll play against Philadelphia. That is a tasty matchup that people are pretty excited about. If you don't know, Pat Noonan, head coach for FC Cincinnati, who's done an amazing job. Chris Albright, GM of FC Cincinnati, this is his first year. They both came from Philadelphia last year. So Albright finished his career playing there, has been in the front office since under Ernst Tanner the last few years, and Pat Noonan was Jim Curtin's lead assistant over the last few years as well. They've brought over Sergio Santos, Alvis Powell, and Ray Gaddis. So there's a lot of crossover between these clubs, and often familiarity breeds contempt. So I think people are really excited about this matchup, and I'm pretty pumped about it. I'm still trying to make the decision. Do I just jump in the car after work on Thursday and drive down? It'll be a tight squeeze to get there, but I was there for a playoff game last year, and I think it's going to be a special atmosphere, and it's going to be really fun.
How long's the drive?
depending on traffic, anywhere from an hour and 45 minutes to 3.5 hours.
Okay.
It's a big range.
Yeah, it's a big one, but why not? Go for it. Enjoy it.
I know. I think I might.
Yeah. I think it's like, I think Philadelphia is going to win this game. And I'm going to say probably handily, but it's MLS playoffs. You never know. And Cincinnati has a puncher's chance. They've got some good set piece winners in the back line. And then on top of it, you've got a marksman like Vasquez right now who can take one chance and put it in, and then we'll see what happens. But it's interesting. It's you never know what's going to happen. I'd want to, before we move on, I want to touch on the West because there was so much that happened in the West this weekend. Do you want to talk about the Galaxy for a bit?
Up to you. You were the one who were high on Nashville, so I don't want to hurt you too deep.
No, but I know that we're a bunch of poochies over here, but my gosh. It's such a joy watching him play. And it's funny how, like, when you talk about Wanyama, who like gets the ball and plays that the exact same way, like there's so many times where Pooch just like will grab the ball and all of a sudden he just turns and just drives 30 yards down, causing chaos. And it's just so nice to see somebody with like that young, with that ability and just joined, and like everything you heard about him before, like I'm just shocked that nobody else was knocking on that door being like, we want him. And it's just great to see that Major League Soccer has that talent.
Yeah, I can't believe he's in the league. And it's kind of, as we're watching this, by the way, there's been 1.5% of me that's been like, maybe you should win because he might not even be, he might just leave now. Like, he's playing this well, right? Like, off season, why would someone not come in for him? But yeah, no, he's so much fun, and it helps when you can't lose the ball. Like, when your touch is off the charts good, you can kind of do whatever you want because no one can really affect you. Chicharito's reading him well. They're playing well together. And I sort of went on for a while last week about how it's changed their defense to know where and when they'll lose the ball. And him and Brugman are the two biggest parts of that. And I think LAFC is a step too far. But again, puncher's chance. Like, this is a different Galaxy team than what it's been the last 5 years, when it's like, if the game goes insane, there's a star on the Galaxy who can win it. Where now it's like, there is a logical reason that the LA Galaxy could go to the Bank of California Stadium and win. And I don't think we've been able to say that pretty much since LAFC's come into the league.
Yeah, I think you're completely right there. I just love watching this Galaxy team play because you just never know what you're going to get. It was like, they're just so reckless. Like, Raheem Edwards was having some great first touches down the wing, but then there was like 2 or 3 times like Bond played the ball out the back and just handed it to them. And you're like, shoot, score. Like, it's such a fun team to watch. They're just chaos personified.
That game, by the way, El Tráfico, it's going to be one of all 4 of the games that are left are pretty amazing. Copa Tejas, El Tráfico, they're both going to be epic. So I cannot wait for Thursday night to watch those two. In Texas, both the teams move on. Last year, I'm pretty sure the last 3 place teams in the West were the 3 teams from Texas. And now you've got 2 in the top 3 spots in the West. Dallas getting the PK win against Minnesota. Austin getting the PK win against RSL. They were different flows, although in the end, it sort of felt similar, of like 2 teams that were much better that couldn't find themselves, not able to get over the line, and then do it in penalties.
Yeah, the Austin game, 15 minutes in, I'm like, Austin's going to come back with this. Obviously, I didn't predict the red card, but you just sort of knew that this wasn't over. It was almost like they punched too early, Salt Lake, and then just chaos ensued. What did you think about the red, though, David?
I thought it was a dumb play, and when I watched it in real time, I said out loud, that's a red card. And I said it in the way of like, it's, you watch these moments where it's like, oh, that never gets called, but it's, when in theory, when you think about it, it should be a red card. Like head-to-head clashes where it's like, that guy came in late and smashed his head into the other guy. If that was a foot, it's a red card, right? That stuff never gets called. So I said out loud, and then I was pretty surprised when they came back and gave it. I don't know what he's doing. He shouldn't go to ground. He then goes through Stuver's body. Like, it's a red. I mean, it's a second yellow at a minimum.
Yep.
Okay, then we're on the same page.
I think so.
I'm glad to hear that.
It was, don't get me wrong. If my team was the one penalized, I would be angry. But at the same time, you got to be like, that just such a stupid challenge for no reason. You were never getting to it. It's got to be on the player and not the referee. The referee's just doing his job.
Here's one thing that's weird. The two teams that won in penalties both shot second. And the numbers, I think, show pretty well the advantage is to shoot first. So that was really interesting to me at the end of all this. And obviously the goalkeepers making saves changes that of like, okay, you want to shoot first, but if you give one up now, the nerves change.
Yeah.
But that stood out to me.
Yeah. I think the interesting thing, because I think there was a question in Ask AFP a month ago. It was around, we were talking about the Canadian men's national team being like, Dane Sinclair is the elite shot stopper. Would we change Borjan out for him in a penalty? And I think that this game sort of, once again, it's small sample size, but I think it's just like, no, I think Borjan's going to just stay in the net for all of it and just ride it out, because as much as I like Sinclair, he had an opportunity to be the winner there and couldn't pull it out.
Maybe Brad Stuver will accept Canadian citizenship and he'll come to the World Cup to be a penalty kick specialist for Canada. I'll put in a good word for him when I get the opportunity. Final one here. We talked about NYCFC and their performance. On the other side for Inter Miami, season over. It means Gonzalo Higuain's career comes to an end. He was beyond emotional. It was a unique experience in my life to just be there. And, a legend, sort of his career finished with Inter Miami, and a little bit of a whimper right at the end, but in general, I think he's going out the right way.
Yeah, absolutely. It was nice to see. It was like at the start of the season, sitting on the bench, and you're like, maybe he's a bad teammate. But I think throughout the year, it sort of just showed the other way, that it was just like, no, he's willing to fight, willing to put in the effort. And I think, once again, the addition of Pozuelo really reignited him, knowing that he had a contemporary that could like really help him and see the lines that he's running and not be so frustrated all the time. I think it was almost like a perfect match for the two of them to really reinvigorate both of their careers. So, it's sad to see elite athletes at the end of their day calling it, because it's so unique in just professionalism. Like, I don't know if at the end of at 65 years old, I'm going to be on my knees crying out of sadness of leaving the game. I think it'll be me crying that I'm finally out of the game, but
that you made it.
Yeah, that I made it out. But yeah, I love to see the passion. I love to see what it means to them and laying it on the field. It's nice to remember that it's a game and people love playing the game.
And he said last night, he has said it for the last few weeks, he fell back in love with the game being here. I think a lot of the toxic parts of being at a massive club, right, which is a huge fan base, which means great fans, and it means a lot of terrible fans, because it's, if it's 2% of Juve fans and Chelsea fans is more than 2% of Inter Miami fans. And plus then you add in the Argentina stuff. So I think that was a lot. And he actually talked yesterday about becoming a mental health coach for athletes and sort of what that entails and how that's affected his life and his career. So it feels like he's leaving on that high, as we said, but he's got some things he wants to do that are not coaching or running a team coming up. And I talk about it on ETR if you want to go listen, but it was genuinely a unique experience. Like, what Phil Neville was emotional about what they went through with Higuain and talked about the atmosphere in the locker room after the game and how emotional it was. And like, this dude's seen people retire, right? He played under Sir Alex. Like, he's been in spots and he thought it was something unique. So that was a really interesting part of this week and a really interesting way for me to sort of end it after going to those 3 games in 3 days. Reminder, MLS rosters for teams that are eliminated. They are starting to release who will be off the team, who is brought back, options that are picked up for TFC. Some big names are out. Obviously, the 2 goalkeepers in Bono and Q. Daniil Henry, it seems like, won't be coming back. Noble Okello out as well, which I think is interesting if I'm a team in MLS, another team. And then on the Vancouver side, it sounds like Felipe Martins has signed a contract extension, so he'll still be there after a bright sort of start for him after coming in late this year. And Michael Baldissimo.
I saw that team. That one, odd.
Yeah. I mean, he was their highest prospect. He obviously hasn't found minutes. I don't know that he has a high enough work rate yet to get on the field around some of those big guys. I have said this a couple of times. I think it's okay for players to reach their peak, not always with the team that they came through.
Yeah.
The beauty of what's been built with the CPL and MLS and USL is there's enough spots now. He needs to pick the right place that plays the right style that will entrust him. And I hope for the best because I still think he's a national team level player.
Yeah, I agree. It's weird. And I know that we're in sort of this transition period for, I think, especially Canadian academies where like guys like Nobo Okello and Baldissimo who have the talent, but it's just not working. There's not a fit. They'll find a second club. They'll find a third club. And there's something there to catch them. It's not a huge worry where you're like, oh, it's done. It's over. Somebody will find him. Somebody will play him and he'll be good. He might be playing in the Premier League next year. So Canadian Premier League, sorry.
Yeah. Or the other one. Who knows? So that's all for us for our little MLS chat. Big playoff games coming up. We'll, of course, be back next week to react to the weekend of games, and we will have your conference finals preview because those two games are on Sunday, and then we'll have your MLS Cup final preview because no international break. So it's all coming fast, and it's been really fun so far. It's really nice, at least I know for myself, to get to dial in on just a couple games and really focus on them and get to see how they play out. But it's not the only playoffs in town. We've got the CPL playoffs right now. So when we come back from the break, we will talk to David Edgar, Canadian national team legend, of course, Newcastle, Burnley, and all of that, but currently Forge assistant coach about their series with Cavalry. All right, John, well, no point in us talking about what's going on in the Canadian Premier League playoffs because we can have an expert, someone who actually knows what's going on. Let's talk now to the assistant coach for Forge, of course, Canadian men's national team legend, all-around soccer legend, and David Edgar. David, thanks for being with us.
Thank you, guys, and thank you for that nice introduction.
Listen, if it's true, it's not flowery. We're just giving the facts. Let's start with what happened last weekend, and then we'll dig into some other topics that we want to get through. But you obviously, your team knows Cavalry quite well. They know these moments, these experiences. What did you see in the last game? What's the feeling about the team's performance?
Yeah, I think you come away from it quite happy with the performance. I think you've got to be the way we controlled the ball and controlled areas that we thought would benefit us. Disappointed not to come away with the win, but again, it's a difficult place to go. You're playing playoff football, and I think it was a fair result in the end.
There was obviously a quick response and how you guys responded to it. Was there anything that was said by Bobby, yourself, Bex, anything said at halftime to sort of get the guys to refocus and come back immediately and score?
You know what? It's a good group, and they take a lot of ownership of their performance. So. They had some words at halftime. It was controlled in a controlled manner. They knew and they had a feel out there of the way things were going. And sometimes it's like in dressing rooms, players can take the lead on that. It's always good to see as a staff.
I haven't been to a game at Spruce Meadows. This was a big one. It feels unique. I think at least watching on TV. What was the experience like? What was the atmosphere like? What was the event like?
In all fairness, I've not had a game at Spruce Meadows without a good atmosphere. It's always been good. It's a good little stadium on that one side. Sorry, the two sides there. It's loud. They make a lot of noise, and they're passionate supporters. So we've always had a good time playing there. They're great for the league, and it's always a spicy game. So I've always enjoyed my time there.
Forge has obviously played a lot of big matches over the course of your first 4 or 5 years as a club. So just going into this game on Sunday, do you guys treat this as just another game, or do you need to continue this sort of like with the knockout match mentality and with so much on the line?
No, I think like you say, we have played a lot of games, a lot of big games, and had big moments and historical moments for the club and for football in Canada. But at the same time, you could go your entire career, as my message is to the boys, and of not really having an opportunity to play for silverware, and that doesn't matter at what level. A trophy is a trophy, and you get an opportunity to play for a trophy at any level. You've got to leave everything out there and make sure you've emptied the tank, so to say. So yeah, it's definitely got a different edge to it, and like I say, a trophy's up for grabs.
We mentioned Forge playing in big games. You, of course, in your career as well, a lot of different competitions, a lot of different formats. I'm curious, just in abstract, 2 legs, 1 leg, away goals, no away goals. What's your ideal format for knockout competition?
You know what? In all honesty, I've not really played many of them and been involved in many of them, really, apart from my time here. When I was at Burnley, we got promoted in second, so you stayed away from the playoffs, and I was never really in the playoffs apart from that. So it's a strange one for me. So I've not had the opportunity to be involved in too many different ways of doing it. But it's, you know what, you've got to beat the best to beat the best. So one way or another, it's a difficult place to go.
So with the two teams sort of knowing each other so well and playing in so many big matches, what do you think separates Forge from a team like Cavalry? Is it a organizational thing? Is it attacking prowess, or what do you think?
I think in big games like we're going to play on Sunday, it comes down to the fine details and who's willing to stay concentrated for that 90 plus minutes, whatever it goes to, for full concentration for those minutes. Like I say, those finer details, whether that be set pieces, marking offensively, defensively, that pass, that run that you might have been told that you watched on video this week, it's going to come down to those finer details, and I think that'll be the difference in the game.
You guys have, people have called an embarrassment of riches up top. A lot of options. It was Pacius in the last game, hasn't had maybe as fruitful a run as he would like. What's the conversation inside your staff of what the different aspects are to the different forwards and how you sort of are going to look at it and pick who gets the choice up top on Sunday?
Well, like you say, we've got plenty of talent up there, and anyone can do a role on any given day. So, as you say, Woban's got his goal on the weekend. He'll be delighted with that after not scoring for a few. But as long as our strikers and our attacking players are getting into a position, then we're creating the chances. We're happy and we're comfortable with us being able to take the chances, whoever it's in there.
So we've talked about sort of Cavalry and Forge and this rivalry that's sort of come out of nowhere, or when the league was being created, nobody penciled that Forge and Cavalry were going to be this hotly contested match. But you've played in these matches, you've coached in these matches. Do you feel like there's real bad blood between you two? Or is it sort of one-sided since you guys seem to have won most of the time?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard this for quite some time, not really on too many social medias and whatnot about the bad blood, but it's not the case. I think every team, what happened at the beginning of this league when Forge won the first 2 championships, every team wants to beat the team at the top. And that's what you have to live with stepping in the door at Forge FC is that standard that was set. And I think that's just the case. I feel like players and teams tend to raise their game when they play against Forge, and that's understandable. And we have to live with that pressure and that on us.
Does it feel different this year, not being the reigning champions coming into this playoff race, being the chaser again and not the chased?
Internally, you just take it one game at a time and just you set your own standards daily, and that's what you go by. So we know we have ambition and goals to go out in there and win everything in front of us. So that's what we're going to go out and do, attempt to.
Well, David had sort of mentioned that quote unquote an embarrassment of riches up top. Forge is the only team in the league that has a lesser than a goal against per game. What is it that's so special about the group at the back that makes this defensive team so hard to crack?
Well, I think you've got to start. You look at the defensive unit. You start with the goalkeeper. You've got a fantastic goalkeeper in Tristan Henry, who deserves all the plaudits he may or may not get. You've got a back four who consistently was inconsistent in the amount we've changed. Right, we've had players come in. We've had a midfielder who's done absolutely fantastic in there. So we've had injuries, we've had ins and outs, dips in form. It's football, and I think the players have learned from it this year. And you've got young players coming into the group and older players who are navigating, possibly playing different roles in the team. So it's like you say, it's the life of football and these ups and downs. But the boys have adapted fantastic, and if I can help in any way, and in terms of helping them out, a lot of them come to me and ask about certain movements and of strikers and whatnot. And if I can help them through my experiences, that's what we're here to do.
When you watch tape with a player, specifically from that defending side, what do you focus on? How do you sort of go about that, and how do you try and help young players sort of figure it out?
I think the one thing I notice the most is all these players can play. It's a fantastic level. Like, it really is a fantastic level. And it's the little nuances of the game that they don't necessarily know because they haven't been in the game for long enough, right? The way a player's body shaping, or telling where they're going to play the ball, little movements, little game within the game type of things that they're developing through experience of playing a season after season, a grueling season, having a bad spell, how you get yourself out of a bad spell, how you have it when you're a good spell, how you continue the good spell, things like that, and the little nuances of the game. I feel like I can help with.
So, for those who may have not been to Hamilton for a match, what should a fan expect from Tim Hortons Field on Sunday? And should we expect a pretty good attendance on the day?
Yeah, you'd like to think so. It's cold this week, but apparently, by all accounts, it's going to be nice on Sunday. The fans are fantastic. They've been fantastic since I've stepped in the door here. They've been great with me, my family, everyone, and even transitioning to the coaching side. The fans have been fantastic. The club's great. It's a great facility. It brings an atmosphere, and on the pitch, hopefully, you see some entertaining football, some expansive, entertaining football. We like to play here, so. It's playoffs, right? Anything can happen, and most importantly, it's exciting for the country. It's exciting for what's happening in the country.
Just one last question before we move on to Canada Soccer Talk. But I was just wondering what your favorite weather was when you played. Did you love a good rainy night? Did you like a cold night, or were you more just hoping for a sunny match and enjoy it?
Yeah, I think I became adapted over time to kind of a sleeker night. I mean, I lived in two of the rainiest places in all of the UK, in Newcastle and Manchester. So I had to become accustomed to it. But yeah, I like a bit of slickness on the ground. I think every player does. It just plays differently. You guys know, you play, so it is different. And if you can handle it, and it just gets a little bit cold here in December. That's the only difference. It's as opposed to over there. But you gotta get through it. And yeah, that was my favorite type of weather, similar to sort of the weather out in Halifax, I guess.
Listen, if everyone has to play worse, I'm at an advantage, because as the skill and speed comes down, I really find my form. So I'm always in favor of that. We obviously want to talk a little Canadian national team with you. Of course, you've had some great experience with that team. Just give us an idea for yourself, for maybe the guys you still talk to, you're still friends with, for the group that isn't a part of the team anymore, but has spent so much time with that as a part of your life. What's it been like watching this side, and sort of what was your experience and reaction to this team finally qualifying?
Yeah, it was interesting because I was part of the group, and then obviously when I went away to England, came back, and slowly was out of the group, and then made the announcements about retirement. And I've watched it unfold. And you know what? I've stayed in touch with the older players in Milan and Atiba and some of the younger boys, but mainly just watched it to myself and just been inspired by the group. It's fantastic about what they've done. And all honesty, I was waiting for it. I knew it was going to happen. I had a feeling this would happen in 2022. It was what they really wanted, what they were really pushing for, and it was a group that were hungry for sure. So they put all the pieces together at the right time, and it's just fantastic for the country, and it's going to leave a legacy that hopefully will live on for decades to go.
Yeah, just to touch on that, it's how do you think that the Canadian Premier League would benefit from not only just making 2022, but also hosting in 2026? Like, where do you see the immediate and long-term effects of a World Cup appearance or World Cup hosting to the CPL?
Well, you can see the CPL. It's the interest that it's gaining around the world in terms of the players. I mean, the national team is bringing eyes on Canada, and then people are going, okay, Canada's got a league. Where are these players coming from, right? So it's going to come full circle. The boys will do well at the World Cup, I'm sure of that. And again, eyes will be on the country of Canada and where these players are coming from. And these players have been here. They've been here, and they're here in abundance, and there's more to come. And that's what the world's going to see. And these players are now going to give the next generation of CPL players and players younger a platform to go out and express themselves in a way, in a professional environment.
Are you going?
I would love to. I don't know. It might be a touch on the expensive side for hotels at the minute, but see if Atiba can sneak me in his room. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, no, I would love to. I said it would be an absolute dream come true, but we'll see. Might be a last minute thing for me.
Either way, we know the draw. We know the group. What's sort of your thought process of what this will look like and what the team needs to do to potentially move on?
Well, you've got to. I mean, you say you've got to get a result, but they're going to go out looking for a result, and I can see an upset. I know it's cliche, and I'm going to sit here and predict it, not, but they'll have a mission, as they say, and they'll go out and each player will know their role, and the team will know their role in each individual game. So it'll be a well thought out plan, and I think if we can get anything in the first game, will stand us in good stead.
Obviously, you've had the opportunity of standing at BMO Field with the Canadian national team at the under 20 World Cup and just with the national team. And then obviously when the anthem hits and the players walk out in November, how's that going to feel for you as somebody who has sort of made the step so that the national team could grow to the next level? How is it going to feel for you and the past players that sort of laid the path for them? Is it going to be a special moment?
Yeah, I mean, I speaking personally, I know it will be. It's going to be almost a full circle moment for me. I remember sitting in my mom's basement watching the 2001 Gold Cup and really falling in love and realizing this is it. And I followed those players. This was before social media and things like that. I knew where these players were playing. I kept an interest in these players winning, and I had dreams of playing for Canada. This wasn't like this was a big deal. This was on my goal list at 10, 12 years old to play for the national team. So to be able to do that and represent my country and captain my country is beyond my wildest dreams as a young boy. But now to have played a small part in that national anthem being sung at the World Cup in my lifetime is going to be a special moment. I might have to watch it in my mom's basement again.
Hey, it's good luck, right?
Yeah, exactly.
We're gonna have Craig Forrest put on his jersey again. We've got everyone has to recreate everything.
There you go.
Just to bring the luck. It's an exciting time of the year. We've got, of course, the Canadian Premier League playoffs into the final, and then we head into the World Cup, and we will see Canada for the first time on the men's side in 36 years. So a lot to be excited about, a lot to be proud of, and we're proud to have you with us. Thank you for taking the time. We appreciate it, and good luck this weekend. All right, big match coming up. Be in the Discord. Tweet at us if you are going to be heading to Tim Hortons Field, leg 2, coming in at a 1-1 tie between Cavalry and Forge. Good luck once again to Forge, as well as all the teams in the CPL playoffs. When we come back, Sean's going to open up the mailbag and ask AFP.
And welcome back. It's now time for Ask AFP, where myself and David do the best to answer all your questions. Thanks to everyone who sent in their questions through the Patreon Discord as well as Twitter. We're going to start with I think a big question that's come across not just on Ask AFP, but across Twitter lately. And Nugsy asks, should we, quote unquote, in brackets, TFC fans, cheer for Montreal, or is that too dirty? David, what do you think?
Well, you're going to be better at answering this than me.
Yeah.
And I can understand the issues. I have my rivalries and the things I hate. I would say, here's the pitch. You have one, It's bringing the league to Canada. There's no other Canadian teams left in the playoffs, right? The potential for MLS Cup to be in Canada and have the buzz, I think, on TSN and on TVA and RDS and all that stuff that exists if Montreal makes it, which I think as a fan, I want more of the sport around me. That's one. Two, they've built the right way. And I think that's the type of thing I, as a fan, look towards and say, oh, yeah, okay, this team didn't just spend a bunch of money, blah, blah, blah. And three, and the biggest one, is it's the form of Canadian men's national team players. And so if you want to root for Kamal Miller and Joel Waterman and Alistair Johnston and Sam Piette and Ismail Kone to, one, play more games, competitive games, heading towards the World Cup, and two, be at their peak level of performance when they then represent you.
All great points. Here's something that's been in the back of my mind for the last little while, and I don't know if it's come with old age or what, because I think 23-year-old Sean would answer this question much different than the 38-year-old Sean. But I'm not going to tell anyone who they cannot cheer for. You can be a Toronto FC fan and cheer for Montreal. You can be a Toronto FC fan and hate Montreal. At the end of the day, do what feels good for you. Like, I feel like I've just, like, enjoy it. If you want to enjoy this, enjoy it. It's sports. That being said, am I going to cheer for Montreal today? Probably not. There's just something deep in my soul that just, like, remembers too many games at Stade Saputo and being yelled at or potentially spit at or things like that I'm just like, I can't. But am I going to shame some Toronto FC fan for cheering for them? No. I'm also the same guy that owns like David Beckham LA Galaxy jersey and a Gareth Bale LAFC jersey. Like, I love Major League Soccer. And so don't shame anyone for what they like. There.
Okay. I can respect that. I will say, as a young person, I did root for the Patriots in their first Super Bowl because it was like a new team, first time, whatever. It's one I regret. But if anyone I know ever roots for the Atlanta Braves, then I'm like, what are you doing with yourself? Like, how can you even respect yourself?
Yeah, I think there's some exceptions to the rules, especially when you're talking about some former teams in Washington or in Cleveland and doubling down on names, for sure. And then also, yeah, like, I would never cheer for Arsenal in any which way in my life. But will I think less of you if you do? Probably. Moving on, there was another big chat on Discord as well as on just general social media. And there's a discussion about Lorenzo Insigne's massive $14 million deal with Toronto FC. Many think Bill Manning is on the hot seat because of it. But what are your thoughts?
Well, my first thought was we kind of knew this, right? Yeah. We knew he was the highest paid player in MLS. We knew what Shaqiri's salary was. We knew it was over 10 million. I guess normally my biggest reaction to DP numbers is I don't care. Once they're above a DP threshold, it doesn't affect the team anymore. It's an owner's money, and I don't really give a shit what that rich person spends their money on. And so that doesn't really matter to me. The question if some of these guys should be DPs and how teams are run and how salaries are allocated under the salary cap and that stuff, that to me is more of like a team building issue. And I want to say it was Patrick who said it well in the Discord, is that Bill Manning's first job is to sell out the stadium. And he's going to accomplish that with those guys on the field. And I thought that was a really interesting way to put it. And that's sort of one of the things I walk away with. What has changed for TFC is that Bill Manning cares about the top 3 players on the roster. He wants to sign them. He wants the event. He wants the, presentation and the moment. Great. He doesn't really care about the other 20 players on the roster, nor is he probably good at picking them. There used to be people in Toronto who were, and they won. I don't know if that's still the case or if they're still empowered properly. And that's where the pressure comes from. And that pressure should fall on Bill Manning because he's in charge of it all. And so I don't think the number they make matters, but if they continue to be bad, that is on him.
Yeah, I don't need to add anything to that. I think you hit the nail on the head. It's about it's about the 20 plus players and the decision maker who is making
the Justin
that.
Moros and the Mark Delgados and the Tosaint Ricketts. It's the roster that used to exist and be deep and doesn't exist anymore. The only thing I will say, and I do think is a fair argument, is if you come and say, well, you're paying Insigne $14 million, but X player who was also available is making 10 and would have come. If you can present that, I think that's a fair complaint to have made the decision over which player you've chosen at that number. I think that's a fair complaint. Last piece is I would combine the two because I don't think Bernardeschi comes without Insigne. And
Completely.
I think Bernardeschi was on $6.5 million.
Yeah, about
right?
6.2, 6.5. Yeah.
So now it becomes those two for 10 each, which I think is more reasonable.
Yes, you're right. The one other thing that I would say, just one little thing, because there's a conversation of the third designated player and how it doesn't seem like TFC is going to open the wallet for that one. So then there's that conversation of like, well, did you spend too much like overall on the budget? Does Lorenzo Insigne equal plus the third designated player? Like if the budget all around was, let's call it whatever, $23 million, could you better allocate $23 million around 3 DPs? Maybe once.
Yeah.
So, but once again, it's all here and there until it actually happens. Moving forward, S. McGinnis asks regarding Halifax, HFX Wanderers. Stephen Hart was let go this week. And there was just conversation about recruitment being an issue. And so S. McGinnis asks, do you think the recruitment thing is always going to be a structural disadvantage? Personally, I'd rather live in Halifax than quite a few other places in the CPL markets. David?
I'm going to push this on you, Sean. I've never been to Halifax.
Yep.
So I'm going to rely on you here.
Yeah, I think there needs to be, yes, is it probably a disadvantage in recruiting to a place that people may not know a lot about? But I think that can be done through, once again, the recruiting process and the education pieces that are going out in these player pitches or in regards to who they're targeting. It's a beautiful place. I would consider it like alongside Pacific in the sort of same realm of like a smaller quote unquote market with a unique living experience and a unique group of people that only sort of understand the brand, like whereas opposed to like whatever, a York United or whatever. You're a suburb and this is who you are. Whereas Halifax like actually has rich history that's different from you and I, that they can really learn and educate and grow, and pitch to players. And once again, if Pacific can go ahead and do these things, Halifax can do the same. So while there might be a disadvantage, they can use that difference as an advantage, I think, down the line. The one thing that I will say that is a disadvantage for a smaller market, especially on the East Coast, would be around the academies and the population. You're not going to have a widespread amount of people to pull from to build an academy as a Yorkwood, a Hamilton, a Calgary, Edmonton, etc. So that might be a bit of a disadvantage for them. But in recruitment, I don't know. You could put a real badass 2-minute like sizzle of what Halifax has versus others that should blow you away.
And I would add, from my experience, when you talk to athletes, and I think one of the tough things is when we think of some sports, we're thinking of, right, 3 leagues. Let's not even say leagues, right? We're talking about 27 teams around the world where they're well supported and sold out and everything. And I remember one time talking to a guy who had come from Ligue 1, not Ligue 2, like first division in France, came to MLS. And I asked him something one time, and he goes, well, it's fun to play in front of fans because except for when we play PSG in Marseille, no one's ever at the stadium.
Oh.
So it's like there are other things you can sell. And when you're coming to a CPL level where, Pacific's done well and Cavalry has great crowds, but it sounded like we heard it from Stephen Hart and the team going into the TFC Canadian Championship game of like, flags in the storefronts and everyone knows who the players are. Like, I do think if you build a culture of winning and expectations in a city where you do have relevance, then it's like, I think players want to be a part of that, at least for some amount of time. Maybe they don't want to live there their whole life, but I think if you cut, like, let's talk Michael Baldissimo. right? He comes out of Vancouver. He needs the next step. He needs to play in a team where he plays. And you come to him and say, come to play in a sold-out stadium, be the center of our team, right? Like, that's more appealing to me than going and playing in MLS Next Pro in front of no one all the time. So that's sort of where I think you can sit.
Yeah, completely. Last question, and it's from our dear friend Clay. And he asks, which team in Major League Soccer is easy to cheer for and you'd love to have a Cinderella run in 2023? Dave, you go first.
Well,
Cinderella,
I don't know. Yeah, I think he's saying basically someone who's under the playoff line, right?
Yeah, I would assume.
Or unexpected?
Yeah. I would say here's the tough thing is that, like, I don't think there's a lot of options for Cinderella. Like, I wouldn't consider Toronto FC to go on a Cinderella run next year with a roster that big. So it sort of whittles it down to sort of small markets.
Yeah, I think so. The two that stand out to me, and they're going to be two different answers. One is Chicago, because I want Ezra Hendrickson to succeed. I think he's done enough for this league as an assistant. I think he's a smart soccer guy. I know some of his assistants as well. It feels like they're going to start playing academy kids. It's a great market for that. Underdog's a tough term to use for a team from the city of Chicago.
Yeah.
But that's sort of where I fall. And the other one is, I guess I'll probably say San Jose. I love Lucci, obviously, and I love the academy kids. There's 6 or 7 of these academy kids that I think are legit, and that should just be the start.
Yeah, I when I looked at the list, I thought San Jose is sort of that team. They've got a rich history that they need to find a way to bring it back to life. They're a smaller market, and they've got themselves a pretty good war chest of, like, young kids who could take that next step next year. So they've got to be there. And I just think it would be nice, and they almost did it this year, but I'd love to see Charlotte. I don't know if it was just, they had such a big, fun fan base. They're new to it all. They sort of had that, like, I don't know, just sort of dumb smile all year. And I think it'd be nice to have this team that didn't really, like, come across, like, you know how we've come into this league and, like, Atlanta has had this sort of arrogance and Seattle has had that arrogance, and there's just sort of the new team vibe that you just don't really like. There's nothing off-putting about Charlotte this year in my mind. You might say otherwise, but I just felt like they were fun and happy to be there, and I'd love them to sort of take that to the next step next year.
Here is actually, I don't want to ruin your Charlotte thing. So I'm going to leave it how it is.
No, give it to me. Tell me the truth.
Well, so they clearly had, the ownership clearly had no idea what it took to win an MLS, didn't respect it enough to care, and they hired people who were unprepared to put together an MLS team, and they did it poorly, including hiring a coach that they then proceeded to fire. Almost everything they've done since then has been good, and I think the way you feel, which is the way I feel, is being around this league as long as we have.
Yeah.
Man, to have a shitty MLS team that plays in front of 40,000 people at a football stadium.
Yeah.
Like, I sat in Giant Stadium. I've sat in Gillette for so many games. So, like, all of that stuff is better than what it could have been or used to be, which was, we suck, no one cares, and we're a drain on the entire league. So I'm okay with that. I also would say it's a great youth soccer market. They've already signed 2 homegrowns. I think they'll continue to sign more, and that's really big as well to what I like. All right. So that's it. That's all for our show today. Devang will be back next week. Thank you, Sean, for sitting in the autopilot seat, the co-pilot seat, the autopilot seat.
Autopilot seat. That's your seat.
I'm really falling apart at the last second there. Thank you, of course, to David Edgar for joining us, and Forge as well for helping put that together. Thank you to Zach for helping us put the rundown together. Thank you to Greg on the 1s and 2s. I nailed that one at least. And thank you to all of you out there for listening. And please, if you enjoy the show, rate and review us on wherever you get your podcast, and go to patreon.com/afootballpodcast so that you can support us and join the Discord as well. And with that, we'll talk to you next week.